proclaimed by the mayor and the city council of the city of Palmer, we express our pride and congratulations for all the work that you have done and the role model that you are to us seniors as well as to the younger generations. And I call upon all the citizens of Palmer to join me in this special recognition and the impact that you have made, and we want you to continue making in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll pass this around.
Okay. I'll get this. Touch it. You want your picture taken with it?
I have it.
Would you like to say something?
Gary Brubaker goes in.
Would you like to say something about her?
Do you want to say something to us? Give us some words of wisdom, advice, or something?
It was a 3.5-year project. We did have a team working on it. It wasn't just me. It's an hour-long documentary, but we have hundreds of hours of footage of the history of ASRC and how the Alaska Native Lands Claims Settlement Act came to be. And we filmed all over the state as well as Seattle. We filmed all the attorneys involved in ANILCA. And then we had to put the story together and tell the story. So we have a lot of archive footage and photos, as well as interviews with some pretty impressive gentlemen. And a couple of them have passed away. They passed away while we were making the documentary. But it broadcast on Channel 2 a few weeks ago. It's also available at asrc.com. And if you search True North, the story of ASRC, you'll find it on Vimeo. But it was an amazing project, and it put together all the things that I love about my job. Most of all, creative direction, but also the editing and the filming and travel, of course, which I love. But it was the hardest thing I've ever done and the most rewarding.
Congratulations.
How was the swag bags?
They were great. We also had to sign a whole bunch of little paperwork saying that we would deface it or give it away or sell it, or it has to go back. Has to go back to the academy if you don't want it.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Unlike the Heisman, when I said we sold it.
Well, thank you. As I said, we appreciate that for your contribution to our city, but also on the board and commissions. Thank you very much. The next item on our communication appearance is the presentation from our Board of Economic Development Chair, Dusty. Come forth, please.
I hate coming up there without an Emmy.
Yeah, right.
You're an award winner. I'll give it a whack. Okay, well, we have 3 seats on the bed that's coming up here in October. My seat is becoming available, Chris Chappelle and Lori Kopenberg. So I'm going to remind all the board members, if they're still interested in continuing service, to submit applications so that they can be considered in October.
Right.
We've been really busy. We pushed our meeting times back to 6 o'clock. That allows us more flexibility to run longer meetings. You know, we do run long meetings. They average probably about 3 hours in my estimation. But we get to spend a lot of time talking about subjects. So we're not limited to 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So we're focusing a lot of time, what you're going to hear about when I talk about some of the things that we've recently completed. The depot, operation review and recommendations. So that is something that we have completed. First meeting on that was in January, then again in February, then again in March, and we didn't have a meeting in April, so we concluded in May. So the depot has been, for those meetings, basically the focus of our meetings. And like I said, they average about 3 hours. So we spent a lot of time on reviewing what's happening at the depot, what kind of changes would we recommend for the depot, or what we did recommend for the depot in January. that whole audience was full of people. I mean, I have never seen more people show up to a bed meeting for any reason whatsoever, but that's because the depot exploded on social media and other places, and so everybody came to talk about it. And so it was great, and it helped us end up where our recommendations ended up. Basically, what our recommendation was to create 5 different categories for the rental of the depot. The 5 categories: city, priority booking. So we created a recommendation for categories and then a booking policy to go along with it. City sponsored, of course, priority number 1. Nonprofit entities, booking a year in advance. Private, a year in advance. Commercial, all other, booking a year in advance. And then commercial retail, so any retail operations, for profit, 4 months in advance. So the idea with this was categorizing and prioritizing the rental of the depot would make the building available to all the user groups and preserve the depot as a community center, providing opportunities, families, nonprofits, community events, and commercial retail to all happen there as the market dictates, but not letting retail overcome the use as a community center. In addition to that, because there are 5 categories going into the future, that recommendation would allow the council to change rates for different categories should they so desire, really. So we made no recommendations regarding rates. Strategic plan, so moving on, unless somebody has a comment or wants to talk to me about depot.
Comments or questions or? Okay, go
Okay.
ahead and proceed.
Strategic plan, we all know you stamped that, updated, so that's good. As I was reviewing it before this meeting, I realized there's a report due in August, so that'll be something we'll be working on for August. Next thing, let's see, what are we working on right now? We are working on short-term rentals. They've exploded across the country. We all know that. Everybody's talking about short-term rentals right now. They have positive effects on our community. They have negative effects on communities across the country. We started this discussion in June. We discussed it again in July, and we're discussing it again in August, and who knows if it's going to go longer than that. Really, the end result of our discussion is to make recommendations or a list of considerations to send to planning and zoning. So that's the end result of whatever we come to in regards to STRs. We also, I think, will have a different perspective because we're economic development and we're looking at economic development strategic plan and making recommendations based on that. So it'll hopefully give planning and zoning some additional insight that maybe wouldn't initially come to them when they started looking at STRs. So we'll come back and report back to you guys after we make our recommendations to planning and zoning, just to be able to explain it and go back and forth. Scanning questions. So we've had some transition with staff at the city, right? So the board, Sandra, David, and now we have Brad. And Brad has brought a really interesting perspective. Not that everybody else didn't too, because everybody has their different thing to contribute. But Brad has brought some scanning questions to the board. So at every meeting, he's bringing us a handful of questions relating to economic development, recreational activities, employment, zoning issues, management of the downtown area, etc. So it's a list of questions. What do you think? And everybody has a chance to read those, think about it, and write down their responses and bring it to the meeting so we can go one by one and say, what do you think? That, just doing that and adding that to our meeting, I think is going to help us develop the new action items that are going to be added to our long-term goals that we already have, based on our long-term goals that we have. So it's the board members really like it, and I think it's going to be productive. So Brad is quantifying the responses, so if you have questions about that, he's back there. He's not listening. Okay. What else are we doing? Drafting pavilion usage criteria. So going back to depot use. So We have the pavilion areas. What are we going to do with that? What's happening with them right now? How are they being used? How are they going to be used 5 years from now? Are there going to be, do we need to charge fees? We need a contract in place. All of these things. Okay, so it appeared on our June agenda. It appeared on our July agenda. It's going to be on our August agenda. So do we rush through things when it comes to depot, when it comes to the pavilion, when it comes to short-term rentals? We don't rush through them. We have long meetings. So we spend a lot of time discussing basically all of these items. So one of the things that we talked about is, should we use the same 5 categories for the pavilion, right? It makes sense initially. We've already done it. So yeah, let's use the same 5 categories. But something I think that we need to think about is that could be a commercial center every day, all the time, if we use those same 5 categories. So that's just part of the discussion. So I don't really have anything more to report other than we're working through it to make recommendations, and those recommendations come back to you guys, I think, right? This body, because there's going to be fees involved most likely. Future topics, roving vendors, code enforcement, parking. There's a whole long list of all kinds of future topics that will be coming up on agendas. We'll just see one thing at a time. Well, no, two to 3 things at a time.
Yeah, sounds like you're juggling all 3 of them in the air and trying to decide if they're all gonna come down together or what's gonna happen, so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Well, I know, like for myself, when I drive by on the weekends at the pavilion, I'll see, I don't know, I think, what is it? Trunk to treasure? or
Junk in the trunk.
Yeah, junk in
I
the
think.
trunk, and I'm like, I wonder if somebody else wanted to try to set up there, or do they have that reserved or what? I mean, those are just questions that go on in my mind. And, and I don't know that there's a way, I guess. Is there, it's not like the depot where we can go and check to see if somebody actually has it rented or so, or whatever.
Not public, there's not a public calendar, but there is a
Yeah.
reservation system for it, so.
Right.
It's just not as
And we
formal as
just
the
assume that
depot.
somebody's planted there, they have reserved it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Fridays and
Chief of
Saturdays
the
are,
Police go out there and check.
yeah,
for
Fridays and
it. They
Saturdays
go-
are typically the only days that are reserved, but yeah,
They
it
can-
needs more formal processes now because it is used. And I will say it's not the pavilion area. The pavilion area is that little gazebo.
Oh,
There's a big
okay.
sign in front of it right now that says parking lot donated by AARC, so it's a parking lot. This becomes something other than a parking lot. So that's part of the discussion is what is that piece of ground? Is it a parking lot that's used sometimes for a market? Or is it the whole thing considered a pavilion and available for use? So it's come to become something other than what it was 20 years ago. So
Okay.
it's ripe for having this discussion and have a policy in place.
Right, yeah, right, yeah. Other questions or comments? Yes, Deputy Mayor Best.
Madam Mayor, thank you. The BED, under the direction of the chair, has been running smoothly. It's a pleasure to sit as the ex officio member from this body to sit on that. And I agree that the formula or recipe that Mr. Hanson has been utilizing to engage in thoughtful conversation to kind of plan his next movements and in our discussions has been refreshing. And I think the conversations have been very in-depth and thought out. So I'm very pleased with the direction that we're going. And the direction the chair has taken us. So I appreciate her time.
Good. Thank you for a good job. Yes.
Thank you, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor. I want to just echo the same sentiments that Councilmember Best, or I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Best just did. I sat as the ex-official member for 2.5 years on the Board of Economic Development, and it's not that they did anything poorly, but I like how refreshing the, let's think outside the box, or let's redecorate the box, however you want to look at it. It really, I went to the June meeting, and it was It was very well run, and I do also agree that Director Hanson has helped do that. It's let's look at it slightly differently and see how we can be productive in a different manner, and it's working. And I want to say I appreciate that.
Any other comments, questions from the council?
Yeah, I was here in the January meeting, and you're absolutely right. Normally, when the boards and commissions meet, you know, we have the quorum and, you know, 2 people maybe in the audience of that, so. And you handled the meeting very, very well. You did excellent.
Any other questions, comments? No?
Right, well, please extend to the board our appreciation. And we, of course, welcome you and the other 2 board members to certainly apply for, to continue to serve. All right, you're welcome. Okay, the next item on our agenda is reports. City Manager, would you like to go ahead, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a light agenda tonight with one public hearing and committee of the whole, so I'll take up the rest of the time with my report.
Do we have a mandatory adjournment?
Yes, we need to start implementing that.
So if we stay late tonight, it's because of committee of the whole and your discussion, not because of my report.
Oh.
So yeah, staff update, it's the last of the month. Call breakdown for the police department. Calls were up again slightly in May compared to May. The traffic was up just 1 percentage point. Our welfare checks versus citizen assistance, welfare checks were up higher than our assistance, but it was down from last month, whereas the assistance was up. So they just kind of flip-flopped this month. Moving on to the fire department, calls were up significantly, I would say, 14 calls compared to May. Rescue had a big jump with 7 additional calls. Fire was down. Hazards were up. But again, not a big month, but still bigger than normal. So the breakdown of calls in their new charts for the 2nd month in a row, we're on a roll now, getting the system to work. You can see the breakdown by the type of call and the percent of overall calls. Moving on to the library and community development.
I have just a
Oh,
question,
yes.
if I could. On page 20 of 43, where it's almost 11% of the false alarm and false calls, and I know from reading the newspaper, you know, there's been some discussion, not about us, but about other municipalities. Is that unusually high? Is that a concern? We need to,
Not for
ones?
Palmer. When
Okay.
you look at the percentage looks high because of 11%, but it's really just 6 calls.
okay,
So when it's
Okay.
the amount of money that we're spending on it, it's not
all right.
that
Okay.
impact. And typically it's Todd or our chief that are going to those calls initially if it's close. So it's something to watch, but because our calls aren't overwhelming,
Uh-huh.
10% of underwhelming is still underwhelming. So, but
Okay.
it is something to watch. When it gets to become a higher percentage, and all our time spent on it, then it's something we're concerned about. But at this point,
Nothing, okay,
it's just to be aware of it, but it's not
okay,
an issue.
okay. All
Madam
right,
Mayor?
thank you. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I have a question of the manager, if you don't mind. Recently, we both were able to attend a meeting where there was a company that was data mining some of the super users of a particular service, and this happened to be at the hospital. Same kind of principle applies to the police department. Are we able to track if we have folks that are kind of habitually utilizing emergency services, police department and fire department, and are we able to show that in these pie charts in any manner?
Through the mayor, we don't have a formal system, but because we have a police department that's really ensconced in our community, they know who the super users are. And Chief and I have talked about how to capture some of this data for the future, because this isn't the first time we've been asked for that. So we're looking for a mechanism that won't cost us money to track, but then when somebody does say, you know, we'll save you tens of thousands of dollars, and we can say, you know, thank you very much, but we're not in the tens of thousands of dollars of cost at this point. But it is some data that would be nice to have that's readily available. But the technical question is no, we don't have a formal means. We do know who they are because it's such a small community. We can go back and pull some of that data as we have time.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
And my only concern is that and I'm glad that we're going in this direction, that we can currently, kind of internally track that stuff. But as we kind of watch things trend in a certain direction, if we see that there's a particular population of folks that are, constantly having to have the police department called upon, then we could utilize some of those numbers to maybe go out to other agencies and whatnot, and maybe synergize with them to help try to alleviate whatever might be the issue that's going on, or kind of look at different formulas to help take care of that.
I would, through the mayor, I would say that we are, again, because it's not community policing, Lance, if I use that term inappropriately, I wouldn't say that what we're doing is community policing, but our police are very in tune to our community, not just in law enforcement, but also getting into the world of social services. So we are part of the crisis response team. The police department works with them. We're working very closely with Matsu Health Foundation and the HUMS team, which provides counseling and helps assist those folks in need. Some of the situations we see are when folks don't want help. That's what we're really seeing in some of our, what you termed as super users, what I may have termed as super users, but some of the chronic users of the system or abusers of the system just refuse help and can't be committed. So we do spend a lot of time on the law enforcement side of moving along or responding to trespass, things like that. So it's something that we're aware of, and we've watched, and as the community grows, population grows, again, kind of the percentages, the population percentage in the valley has grown quite a bit. So has our homeless, to probably the same degree of growth. But when you actually talk about the individual numbers, I would say we probably have a half a dozen of chronic homeless that you might call residents of Palmer, because this is where they've migrated to. But we do have the transits that come in and want help, and we get them to the help they need. So the numbers, when you compare it to Anchorage, you wouldn't even fill up a table probably at Beans Cafe with the number of folks we have in our town. But compared to the past, the number has grown. And Lance wants to make a comment, I think. Oh. If you'd like.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Lance Ketterling. I'm your Chief of Police. So we keep statistics in a variety of different ways at the police department. All these individuals that we know as the high utilizers, we can track by name and figure out how many times we deal with those individuals over the course of any given time period. As a matter of fact, right now, we don't tell you, but our admin staff is working on a group of statistics for these high utilizers, just so you can see how often we contact them and how many man hours we spent talking to them. So we can track it by incident type, we can track it by location, we can track it by individuals. What we don't have for something which is mental health related or which is just not mental health related. It's something that we could implement, and we'll probably do it when we have our new CAD system, but we've never had cause to in the past. And the challenge with that is, how do you define whether it's a mental health crisis or not? Because if you include substance abuse, which most of the official organizations do, then it's probably 7% of our calls are going to be mental health related in some way. Our goal is to work with these groups like HUMS, High Users, Matsu, the CIT group, and a lot of these other organizations, that we will call people that can come out and respond with the officers. There have been several people from homeless shelters that have come and made the rounds with us through the various campsites around the city, and some of these individuals that actually are looking for help, and we've had good results from that. The challenges we see are these individuals that self-identify very quickly. We all know, we've seen them around town quite a bit, who either are not able to function within the requirements of the systems that are trying to help them, or they simply don't want the help. And so that's basically the stance of things right now.
Questions of the chief?
Dave, we don't want to forget you online. Just, anytime you have a question or anything, try to get our attention. Are you okay?
Well,
Okay, thank you. All righty, we'll have the city manager finish his report. Go ahead, sir.
So moving on to community development, unless there's more questions with emergency services. So, library, total numbers up again slightly. Overall, the usage in the library is up again from May to June. A significant jump in our programs, the number of visitors there by almost 1,400. So the library continues to get great usage for our community. Moving on to the building report. Just kind of want to highlight that we have 6 new housing starts within the city. That doesn't, I mean, that's not included anything outside the city in the Springer system or further out. But those are within the city limits, and majority of those are in Hidden Ranch, and they continue to build out that area. Whispering Winds, you can see the $6 million value of their project has started, is well underway. So just again to show that Palmer folks are still investing here. It's a great place to be. You turn on to the next page, you see the valuation and how much we collected in fees. This time last year, we had the 9th lowest year. We're now the 5th compared to the last 10 years, so it's picked up quite a bit in Palmer. Moving on to the golf course, compared to last month, again, we're up a little bit. Well, actually, we're up overall. When you look at the green fees, it looks like it's down. However, May was our first month, so those are our annual fees get captured in there. So when you look at overall play, it's gone quite a bit. And you compare it to last year with the cold and rainy weather, we're up from last year as well.
Madam Mayor, I just
I'm
have,
sorry.
can you tell me what a comm alteration is on the type of permit?
It's a commercial.
Thank you.
Yeah, RE is residential and commercial.
So they're just, what do those usually entail? They're just really high value, so I'm just curious.
Generally, they're higher dollar value. I'm not sure what the state fair is doing. It may have been a roof replacement on a couple of buildings that blew off this winter. The other big one was the state is doing some work on where the old DMV used to be. They're remodeling, make it bigger for fishing game. So that's ongoing there.
Got it. Thank you.
And the rest of the big ones are home construction. Some things that aren't on the report. Our front entrance has now been reopened. We're still using the back drop box for the city hall, but that should move to the front in the next 2 weeks. Had some comments about the handicap parking spot. We've found that there is no formal standard for the handicap, but it's backwards compared to everything that you see elsewhere. So we're going to repaint that. It's not a right-handed entrance. That's just how the paint got flopped on the side. But the front rail still needs to be put in. The city is doing that work. It'll be a handrail as opposed to the orange barrier that's out there. And then the blue sign that we talked about last week will go up front, and then the bronze plaque that's on the current front will come back here to the city council chambers entrance. We were notified yesterday that the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration's Airport Improvement Grant Program for July was awarded, and we were in that list. We received $519,000. Council approved me executing that grant, and then you will see the actual appropriation for it in August. If you pay attention to the roads, the surface, you may have seen in the downtown area, at least on this side of the Glen Highway, a lot of traffic counters. I've had a couple of calls about those. Those are from DOT. They're doing their annual 3-year updates on a lot of the connector roads. So we'll actually get raw data because we asked about them. They'll provide the raw data to us on what those results show. So it's not in conjunction with the Glen Highway, although I'm sure they use those numbers, but it was just part of their 3-year update. The amusement park, I sent some pictures earlier. The new mulch that went in today, 20 yards worth. Darren Park will be the next park. The Darren Park mulch will actually come from our yard. From all the yard waste that we collected and chipped with a new chipper. So that'll be going up to Darren Park in the next week or so. And then the grounds crew is also working on the Arboretum, cleaning up some ground there and then clearing away for a potential gravel parking lot on Golcana. The old parking lot's on private property now, so we need to move the sign and get folks to not park on private property. DOT held a pre-construction meeting for the Glen Highway expansion project. They let us know that QAP was awarded the contract. They were supposed to meet with them later in the day for the actual pre-construction meeting and give them their notice to proceed. The timeline looks like at the start of next week that QAP will start to mobilize, finalize their stormwater prevention plans, and then the following week by 6 August to start initial clearing and grubbing for utility work. And then we should see the utility companies start doing their relocations starting about the 13th of August around Commercial Drive. No work, they say no work during the state fair. There will be limited work, but it won't be on the roads. It should be on the sides of the roads. The state has said adamantly no work on the roads or side roads or feeder roads to the state fair during the state fair period. And then we'll see construction start, or utility relocation start on Evergreen right after Labor Day when the fair ends. So that was the headaches of construction in downtown again, and that'll last through about 2020. They expect to have it paid by the end of the construction season, and then final painting 2020. So 2 years of headache, but once all said and done, I think will be a good thing for the city. With the Palmer-Wasilla Highway done, the Glen Highway done, and then they can do the Moose Creek piece after that. So that's kind of what we look forward to. And then tomorrow afternoon, I'll leave, be out of town for a day and a half fishing. I'll be back Friday morning for Palmer Pride and celebrate Palmer setup.
Questions or comments from or to the city manager's report or anything else? Okay. City clerk's report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a written report in the packet, but I do want to let the council know that I have sworn in the Planning and Zoning Commission members last Thursday. That was Andrew Corbin and Rhonda Wolbach. And then yesterday, Heather Kelly came in, got all her paperwork in, and I gave her her oath of office. So she is official Park and Rec board member, and we will do the ceremonial oath on Thursday, August 2nd, when they have their meeting. So very exciting. We have a full board and commission all around. Yay. It's been a little while, right?
Yeah, right.
Just a reminder that filing deadline is 4 o'clock this Friday. 3 petitions have been turned in and have been certified as qualified candidates, and that is Pete LaFrance, Richard Best, and Linda Combs. So at this point in time, we have those 3 names on the ballot, and that's pretty much it. My focus has been elections.
Questions? Oh, yes.
Were you able to get election officials for?
Yes, just today I confirmed with the borough clerk, the borough deputy clerk, that we have all 5 for the Mat-Su Borough Precinct as of Monday. And then we have all 5 at the senior center. So the borough, I don't know borough-wide how they're doing. My understanding is that they're full, not completely filled with the amount of people that they want per precinct, but they have the minimum amount. So right now they're just looking for backups because, of course, backups are usually called in. So they're still needing some, but I am happy to say that we have it for Palmer. We're good. Thank you for asking the update on that.
Any other questions or comments to the city clerk? Okay. Already for the mayor's report, you have my written report. The agenda setting meeting is going to be August 2nd instead of July 26th for those that are interested. The Friendship Park was dedicated. They anticipated that they had about 600 people go up, attend on Sunday afternoon, and Deputy Mayor Best joined me as well as John Moosey from the borough when we cut the ribbon. And so it's nice to see an organization in our community take the initiative and do something instead of, coming to the city and saying, okay, I got this great idea, now you guys take it and run with it, So anyway, it was an thing. And then on July 31st, the Best in the Valley, I heard today it was announced that Senator Hughes is going to be the speaker at that event. Now, you do have to purchase tickets. You have to go online and purchase the tickets, but I think that's going to be a good event, and I'm glad that the Frontiersmen decided to have it in Palmer rather than someplace else. So that's going to be good. Yeah, that's right, because we're the best in the valley. That's right. Good point. Excellent point, sir. One of the things I needed to get your information and input on is the requests that we had from the new executive director from AML regarding the ballot measure number 1. And so I was just wondering, does anybody have any comments regarding that? Or we need to send them to them, so. Anybody have anything? Okay. I'm personally in opposition to it, the way it's presented, and one of those bases for my position is when we were in Juneau for AML in February, I believe it was the mayor's meeting, we had the report, and the one thing that stuck out to me, and maybe it's because, you know, we're doing $11 million out at the wastewater treatment plant, but that if that, at that time it was a House bill, and, but now it's turned into this ballot proposition, that if it passed, that every wastewater treatment plant in the state would be in violation, every one of them. So on that, and then I did attend a presentation that was given at the depot a few days ago, and that was a question I asked again, is that true? And they said yes. So so I think I would like to forward that to AML. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Best.
Madam Mayor, has our attorney reviewed that language as presented? Thank you.
Councilwoman Combs? Uh-huh.
So are you submitting comments on behalf of the city or just for yourself?
Well, I think this, they've asked us to submit on behalf of the city to AML.
Okay.
So,
are you sharing those sentiments with them or?
well, I would like to send those in, because that was our report. Niles wasn't there at that time. You know, we had a different executive director. But, I would like to forward, those, because it's my understanding that this proposition is the same as the House bill, and that is grave concern to the city. I'm thinking directly. I mean, it's not a philosophy opinion or anything like that. That was stated. Thank you.
I guess just before we would submit those comments, I would just want to make sure that it was accurate from our attorney as well before we voiced that opinion.
Okay. That, as I said, that was the opinion that was given to us by AML in February, so, and it needs to be submitted by tomorrow. Go ahead, sir.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Our practice has been if we're taking a position on a ballot measure, and this may be hyper-technical, but we adopt an appropriation to do that under our own ordinances.
Well, I think this is just the direction to AML. He's just asking it's to AML, it's not, you know, taking a formal position.
And it looks, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Go ahead.
It just looks like he's asking for us to send in any technical questions. So maybe just sending in the question regarding wastewater treatment facilities, not necessarily us taking a stance on either side. That's what I would be more comfortable with.
That if it does affect wastewater treatment plants.
Well, just asking, it says, in order to determine this effectively, we're asking AML members to send us technical questions about the measure, which we can submit to the state for answers. So just asking the question if we
Sure.
would be in violation.
Right, so
Madam Mayor,
that's not taking, yeah.
if I may,
Anyway.
then it would be, our question to them would be, how would this, or would it impact us or delay us renewing our current permits for wastewater discharge? I guess that would be my question, and if that's the appropriate way to address that question, or we could have the attorney address a question that would raise that sentiment.
Right.
I think that's very important to us. As I read through the initiative myself, one of the small pieces of language that kind of struck me is it states, if a project may impact a salmon stream.
Yeah.
and may impact. Those are two very subjective pieces of language. And I'm
Right.
sure that an attorney might be able to just jump on those things and really bog a project. So that's why I think it would really impact us.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
So. So I guess, Madam Clerk, you can relay to Niles then what we have decided regarding if the technical question would be for the state, if it does affect our wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, I think that before preparing, the communication directly, I will consult with the attorney, city
Sure,
manager, and
absolutely.
yourself as we gather exactly
Sure.
how we want to word that. But what I'm
Right.
hearing is the question to be asked of the legislature is what
No, that this-
impact,
yeah.
or to him, but
To the state, yeah.
to him, that he's saying would be, what would we be passing on to the state is, what is our
Be an
wastewater
impact,
wastewater treatment plant, what kind of permitting fees, things of that nature. So we'll get
Yeah.
that all together and
Right,
work it out before we send it out tomorrow.
okay, good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're ready?
And Madam Mayor,
yeah.
just for the record, I second that, just so that we see that.
Okay, good, all right, thank you. Okay, then the next item on, my report is, Charter College reached out to us. They are in Wasilla and they met with Nate and I. They have a number of federal, students there, and, they like them to volunteer into the community. And so, we discussed with her a number of areas, whether it's library or, whatever that we have in the city that they have students that want to volunteer. And you have any other input on that, any other thoughts or anything?
See what she comes back with.
Yeah, we'll see what she comes back with, but, so anyway, so we had that. And talking about the building permits for the new homes, I don't know if any of you have been up in that area, but they're, the road is very nice up there. They paved it and so.
Cedar Creek, or Cedar Hills you're talking about, or?
No,
Hidden
in
Ranch?
Hidden Ranch, yeah.
Up
some-
there is subjective. Where's up there?
Yeah.
Hidden Ranch.
Yeah, and so anyway, that is gonna be a nice addition to the city of Palmer. Then also, I had some citizens that are concerned about prisoners being released in Palmer, from Goose Creek as well as from the pretrial facility. And, the chief of police, came and met with me and them, and, they've just had some encounters, and, well, the chief of police had some good recommendations for them to talk to some people at the pretrial facility. And, then, we will see what else, but I don't know if any people had concerns from the, public regarding, the people that are being released, they're arrested and then they're being released, and of course, they come in, they don't have a vehicle to get back, or they don't have money, or a lot of them don't have a phone or anything. And so, Councilman Combs.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I have heard similar concerns, particularly, let's say in the last week or so, as I was gathering signatures, and it was across quite a spectrum, in my opinion. And the concern is about the increase. I'm sure we've had some before, but there's a perception that there's been an increase of individuals going through the system and being, basically they're released because it's in Palmer, and like you said, they have no transportation, sometimes not funds. They're real concerned about how much this is adding to the homeless population increase that we've seen, and some crime wave. So far, nothing terrible, a lot of maybe verbal confrontations, but not anything else. But it's become a concern. I think I shared this with you as well in several of the meetings I've gone to that have to do with our senior citizens, both here in Palmer and throughout the valley. that particular item has floated up through the list as a priority. Housing and transportation had been the two top priorities, immediately followed with being able to find a physician. And this particular concern about crime and about an increase in it has risen up to be, I'd say, the number two concern amongst our older population. So I think it's something that we need to educate ourselves on, first of all, so that we can respond to these folks, because that's part of our job, and just keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And then this afternoon, I believe, the city clerk forwarded to you an invitation to the smoke-free celebration on August 3rd at the Matsu Health Foundation. I will not be able to attend that, so, but if you are going to attend, if you will take and let the city clerk know, so we have the right number of people. And I think there's at least two of us that have responded that we're going to attend the quote town hall meeting on crime on Saturday afternoon. I don't know if anybody else is going to attend that or not, but, so. Any questions or has anybody else? No,
Just the two.
okay. Anybody have any questions or comments on the mayor's report? Okay. And I was on the radio this afternoon talking about Palmer Community Pride and encouraging people to come, and we have a number of awards that we're going to give out, and so it should be a good time again. Okay, city attorney's report.
Madam Mayor, thank you. The points that were raised about increased homelessness, potential crime, property crimes, drug abuse is not unique to Palmer. It's happening in Anchorage very substantially, and it's a large topic of conversation. And if you've driven through Anchorage on any of the main thoroughfares, you can see quite clearly that there's people there that are panhandling and that are potentially homeless. I mean, I don't know, there are various circumstances, obviously, but you would assume that they're homeless. And the car theft problem in Anchorage is rampant. All sorts of cars are being stolen like that from people, and they're used by people in drug activities. So some people attribute it to SB 91. Others disagree with that idea. There was an article in the Daily News on Saturday or Sunday about SB 91 that said there's 30% less nonviolent offenders that aren't incarcerated. So I don't know if that's part of the problem or not, but it's reaching into the valley, and hopefully the state and others can increase resources to address the problem on various fronts.
That's right. Yeah, I don't, I think maybe it was on Facebook from the city council meeting in Wasilla on Monday night, they were talking about licensing, having the panhandlers get a business license. I don't know, I didn't listen to the minutes, but somebody had brought that up, that was something that was discussed at the, so anyway. I don't think we will probably hopefully go that far in Palmer. Of course, we'd have to give the police department, they'd have to go out and be sure that the business license was physically on the panhandler, so anyway. Okay, the next item on our agenda is audience participation. Anybody in the audience can address the council on any matter, whether it's on the agenda or not. 3 minutes if you're representing yourself, and 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Audience participation is now open. Seeing no one come forth, I'm going to close audience participation. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing for Resolution 18-001-A, amending the budget for the city of Palmer for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018. Do you want a staff report before I open the public hearing? No? Yes?
Please.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Resolution 1801-A is our mid-year amendment. We didn't do one last year mid-year because we didn't have a lot of revenue that we had to account for, and the administration didn't need more money. I would tell you that this year, the administration doesn't need more money again, but we have a lot of revenue this year that we need to account for, so that's why we're doing a mid-year budget amendment this year. The most significant piece, when you look at the overall numbers, and really the revenue versus expenditures for mid-year, balance out for the most part, except for the Flight Service Center, the work out there, and that project continued to grow with the abatement and delays. The good news to that side is that the FAA picked up a large portion of the delay funding, the extended mobilization costs, so that's part of the revenue. But the overall project was about $19,000 over what we projected, so we're accounting for that here. And all those contracts were approved by the council. It's just now we're playing some cleanup. Overall, the big pieces that we're accounting for, you can see on page 28 of 43, the itemized list, and then when you look at the resolution, the actual dollars. But some of the big items are the library grant for, I think it was about $7,000. The borough for revenues also was, we had to account for the or the SRO, school resource officer, that the school district was going to pay for, so that would account for a lot of our some revenue. We had some insurance revenue come in for the depot doors. That was accounted for in the public works, actually doing the work, so accounting for the expenditure there and for the repairs. And that's really, in a nutshell, that's what we're looking at. E911, we received, it wasn't a grant, we received capital funds from the E911 fund of about $60,000. That will go towards our CAD and radio upgrades that we talked about earlier in the year. So again, cleaning up those pieces. Legal fees for some activity we didn't plan on. Insurance will pick up some of that, but in the police department, we incurred some legal fees for a case that's just about to finish up. And then that's really, again, as I said a minute ago, that's really in a nutshell where we're looking. So it's to capture some revenue that we didn't think we were going to get that came in. You'll see another appropriation in next month for somebody that didn't quite make it, the $500,000 I talked about for the FAA grant. We'll need to appropriate that and account for it in the budget process, but it came in 2 weeks too late to make it for this process. So unless there's specific questions about the itemized dollars, it's really just housekeeping more than anything else.
Madam Mayor,
Deputy Mayor.
to the manager, and this is just kind of a clarification for, just for the record. The damaged doors, it's not stated like repaired on other items, you know, Flight Center had repairs, damaged doors. Is that a particular incident, or was it over time and just?
It was a particular incident. There was a U-Haul truck for a vendor that backed into the doors. The insurance, they had insurance for that truck for their, I guess, hitting the building. The insurance company provided funds, but the work was already done, repair work was already done by Public Works. So they didn't line up accounting-wise, or the funds coming in versus the expenditure going out. So it was a one-time deal, is what that damaged door was.
Further questions of the city manager? Okay. If not, then I will go ahead and open the public hearing for Resolution 18-001A. Anyone is welcome to come forth and testify on this bill or ask questions. Public hearing is now open. Does the council have any objections to me closing the public hearing? The public hearing on resolution number 18-001-A is now closed. What is the wishes of the council? Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 18-001-A. Any,
Ask a question.
sure.
Gina, can we make an amendment now to this for the FAA grant? Or should we wait? I just thought of that just now. We know what the dollar amount is now. It's not appropriated yet.
We can take 10 minutes.
Well, it's already, we'll wait.
Okay.
I just thought it might save some time.
Oh.
We still have to appropriate it, so it's might just do it all at once.
Okay, all right, okay. So what's the council, any council have any amendments or questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor Best?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to point out, in the packet, you'll see on page 28 and 43, the general fund unassigned fund balance after this resolution will be $3,964,667, bringing the unassigned fund balance to 35.13% of the total budgeted fund expenditures. This is above the 16.67 best practice recommendation. So we're not sticking our neck out excessively, that we have always been very conservative in our approach, and this is not taking us down a path of being overextended again. So
Right.
that's part of the reason why I'm in favor of this.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Any further comments by the council? Okay, so the clerk will call a roll for the voting for or against. All those in favor will say yes, and all those opposed will say no. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council, I'm tired. Councilmember Fuller. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs?
Yes.
Councilmember Linda Combs?
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Richard Best?
Aye.
Mayor Edna DeVries?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is new business. And with the council's permission and their motion, we'll go into a committee of the whole to discuss our 2019 budget priorities. What's the wish? Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I move that we go into the committee of the whole.
Okay,
Second.
all righty. It's been moved and seconded that we go into committee of the whole, discussion or amendments by the council. Madam Clerk, would you read the roll, please? Pardon? Yeah. Yeah, the meeting tonight is so light that it's harder to keep track of than when we have a big demanding meeting, isn't it? Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
Councilmember David Fuller?
Yes.
Councilmember Sabrina Combs?
Yes.
Councilmember Linda Combs?
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Richard Best?
Aye.
Mayor Edna DeVries?
Yes,
We have a, motion passes.
okay. So we are now in the committee on the whole, and without objection from the council, well, call on the city manager to present to us what he has proposed that's in our packet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, much like last year without the budget amendment, we're getting ready to start planning for 2019. So I'll give you a recap of where we are right now with expenditures and revenue for the first 4 or 5 slides, and then some ideas have been floated and some things to consider. And I would say that we don't have to solve all the financial problems for 2019 tonight, but just give me some planning guidance. If there's projects you'd like us to research to propose for 2019, then you have from now until we approve the budget in December to get those ideas to me. But the sooner you can get them to me, we can have the staff work on them and put some dollars to projects and see if we want to put those on a list or not. So moving into the next slide, which is basically summary, we've just done our mid-year budget amendment, and that was to account for primarily revenue streams. The next slide, which is revenue, shows our sales tax, where we're standing with sales tax. There's a lot of red on that slide. Red usually is concerning. It is a little bit when you look at the difference between our projections and our actual totals. Percentage-wise, though, it's less than 2%, and we raised our projection from last year to this year by 2.85%. So what it really tells me is we're not showing the growth that we thought. But the other piece that lies behind this, in January is when normally we get our dispatch payment. So this data, our target is based on about 8 years worth of data, and the average over 8 years what January looks like. So without that big chunk of revenue in January, it gets spread out over time. So you can see we're 262 in January. Here it's June, we're 269. We expect property tax from 2018 to go up. So I think that gap will close quite a bit as we move into July, August, and the borough starts feeding us our property taxes. When you look at sales tax,
Computer just shut down.
ah,
Are we still recording?
yeah,
I do have audio and I have my computer. My computer is down. I'm sorry. The buzz is happening because the Da Vinci's on.
Okay, so should we recess for a
Yeah,
minute?
can we recess?
We'll go ahead and recess for 5 minutes or 10 until clerk takes care of her.
driving me crazy. No, it will be in a second. Two off? What? Off? What's off?
I figured I'd do
That's
it
probably what it is.
because I was coming anyway, so why not? I'll fix.
Ah, there we go. Got a cool breeze and it quit ringing in my ear at the same time. It's the borough virus has leaped over here. The borough shut down today. Yeah. Either virus or hacking. I haven't bugged them to find out what the or somebody hacked in. Don't know. Yeah, just let them get their systems up and running and say, hey, after the fact, what's going on? But notified our IT guys at 9 o'clock this morning that they were having problems and keep an eye on our systems.
Yes. The sprinkler heads are all intact. What happened is the compressor is failing, so they got back to the
Got any good projects for next year?
I have lots of projects.
Anything we can afford?
Money.
Anything we can afford? It does. It's smaller, but I think it looks better. Yeah, we lost 4 spots.
I've never seen it fall.
No. Yes. And it's one way now,
I know it was one way before. Like equal spots.
for the most part. When the stoplight goes in there, it'll make more sense. No. We can put it in the budget for next year. 50 grand.
50,000. That's not that much. We can use our sign.
It's going to order tomorrow, so probably a week.
Would you mind about throwing out the first pitch?
No, I'm not throwing out the first pitch.
What if I buy a check?
I thought you wanted to throw the first pitch out.
I'm gonna do it. I don't want to. Are you gonna buy your tickets? Are you gonna buy your tickets that day?
Buy my tickets. Oh, wheelbarrow tickets? Oh, hell yeah. When's the last night they get sold? Today, Saturday?
Yeah, I think so too, you know, so.
The son, though, I forget his name. He was
Oh, sorry about that. This is Norma. Totally, computer just shut down, so we're getting up and going again right now.
No worries.
Thank you.
Am I too loud?
What's that?
Am I too loud?
What did you say? He said, am I too loud? Oh, no, I can't hear you, actually. I was just thinking.
You can't hear me.
Like you were here looking at me what I was doing. Yeah, I'm like, what?
I am the omnipotent voice.
Okay, just don't forget to mute your phone.
Muting.
Thank you.
All right, if I can have the council come back to order, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize.
Yes. Well, we're back on and we're in the committee of the whole, and the city manager is presenting to us some where we are and for us to give him some input on 2019 budget. Sir, if you want to continue, please.
Okay, so a real quick recap for the overall revenue. I don't think we're in bad shape with it showing $269,000 below our target. The other thing to note is it's not spread like peanut butter. Again, this is based on historical data, so at this point in time, we're normally at 44% of our revenue collected. The way we look at expenditures, our target is 50%, so it's not like your normal checkbook. But in the end, we hope that our checkbook balances. When we look at sales tax, January and February were high months. Again, we kind of expected that. Again, the data is based on 8 years worth of data, but it didn't include Fred Meyer's grand opening, which occurred in March of last year. So we expected January and February to be a little higher, and it panned out that we were pretty accurate in that case. The rest of the 4 months, last 4 months, have trended down. I don't know why, but it seems to be across the board except for our 2 grocery stores and our gas stations. They're above where they were last year, and the rest of the city seems to be just at or slightly below where they were last year. So again, we projected an increase of about 2.85%. We're not meeting our projection by about 1% each month. So it's not concerning because overall we're still ahead of our projection, but from month to month, we're slightly under.
Okay, go ahead, Mike has a question.
Mr. Manager, sorry to interrupt. Just a quick point. A few weeks ago, I mentioned the internet sales tax case, and that's in the throes of development and how it will work on the municipal level. So that obviously is a policy question as well, but that could be something that could be available for additional revenue to the city at some point in time, but not, there's still questions that the municipal attorney group is looking at and working through, so there'll be more to report as that issue evolves, and there's probably going to be some model municipal ordinances that are prepared that we can look towards depending on what your wishes are.
Okay, so is that something that we can maybe do some projections for next year's budget, do you think? Would they be ready by the first part of January or a year from now, or what's your best estimate?
I'm not sure, and I wouldn't
Okay.
want to suggest that there's some money, there's some revenue stream coming in because it's relatively speculative and
Okay.
there's, it's still sort of in development, as I said, so I don't
Okay.
think I would include that in
Okay,
revenue projections, at least at this point.
okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead, sir.
And that might be something we don't even project. We just let the cards fall. When our ordinance gets put in place, we let the first year ride, and then we can project after the first year. Because it's
Okay.
really, who knows what that would be.
Sure.
It could be like marijuana, that folks think it's gonna be a huge boom, and so far what I've seen, it hasn't been a boom everywhere. So
Right.
that's a philosophical question we can pursue when it comes time, but that would be a nice source. We're looking for new revenue. We have to have some area of new revenue, and that would be a new area of revenue for us.
For the record,
Yes.
you were talking about the internet, not the marijuana.
using marijuana compared to internet sales tax as a,
Well,
you
said that that's,
it's not a boon to the city. Marijuana is not a boon
Yeah.
to the city.
yeah.
But for Colorado, it was.
But a
For
revenue
Alaska, not
source
so
we might
much.
want to look into was more the internet versus the marijuana.
Yes.
Yes.
Although I might go out on a limb and in 5 or 6 more years, we might look at marijuana. So in summary, this there is we're watching. Now, the first one is sales tax. We just make sure that we're tracking on our target. And then agency payments as we come into the summer month, both state and the borough for contracts that we have to make sure they pay on time so that we don't see glitches or bumps in our trends.
Sir?
Yes.
I would like to, I guess it would probably be in September, see property tax collection in September, right, from their August payment, just to see, if the economy is having a, a glitch too on people paying. And if that's, the percentage of collection is down, maybe not the dollar amount, but, the percentage of collections down compared to what it was a year ago. That would be interesting to
It would
sort
be
of
good
look
data
at
to
too.
look at.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Next area would be expenditures for 2018, where we stand so far. As you can see, the tourist center and non-departmental are the two that are above 50%. Again, 50% is kind of our target goal for this time of year. Because the first half of the year is snow, the last half is snow, the middle is what it is. So it varies a lot on the weather and time of year. So again, 50% is what we've used as our percentage marker. And everybody is below that by at least 3 percentage points at this point in time. Tourist Center, we pay our contracts up front, so that's why that's so high. And then the non-departmental, some of our transfers to capital are made already. The airport's not made yet, so that's what most of the non-departmental is. And we don't do that one until the end of the year when it's time for closeout, just to see where the airport stands. Looking at the enterprise funds, those are also well under. Golf course, again, because it's contract, we pay that up front during the initial part of the season, so it's higher than it would be if it were a year-round operation. I would expect it to be at 50%, but because it's contract, it's paid up front. That's why that's a little higher. And then the airport revenue, again, we talked about the transfer not being made in yet. So again, all our funds are in good shape as far as expenditures. Moving on to areas to watch, our vehicle fleet maintenance. We have new vehicles coming in throughout the year. Our police cars are here. Our trucks aren't for the public works and the fire department. Those are expected later this summer. I don't expect any money to be invested in those, but some of our older trucks, especially with the grounds crew being used in the summer, we usually see one truck go down. We've got a really old fleet there. We may see 2 go down. Shouldn't be a huge expenditure. The way we're managing our pass down fleet, we should be okay going into next year. Roads and drainage. We're seeing some drainage issues on Eklutna Loop and Rimple. I don't know that we'll do anything this year. Those are some things we can talk about for capital. But if we do have more issues throughout the summer, although most of the wet weather is past us, if we see something in the fall, we may have to invest a little bit there. Old steel water lines, again on Eklutna Loop, on Valley Trails, we've had several leaks on water mains and surface lines on the city side, so we're continuing to watch those. We'll need to consider at least Eklutna Loop in the next year or so about replacing the steel water line, and that could be in junction with drainage, but that's a pretty good sized project, anywhere from $300,000 to $800,000 depending on what we do out there. And then finally, any city manager good ideas. Been pretty good at holding back on those, but some of those things are bike racks. We've got our signs for the buildings. Those have been funded. If we do any additional funds, those may come out of my discretionary fund. And any other small connectors for trails, like the depot we did last year. If we can get a small grant, or if we can do it with the city, I just make sure I keep my direction to staff in check with what our budget stands. And we've been pretty good at getting things done and staying within budget. So it's just, again, areas to watch.
On those 2 large electrical boxes that are on South Alaska Street, I think the last time we talked, you were gonna check with MEA or something. Can you bring me up to date on that, please?
We own both of those.
Okay.
So it's on our list of things to do, but not quite up there. My thought was to run a competition much like the bike rack through Parks and Rec in the winter, and then get everything set so those things can be painted in the summer. We have to identify what kind of paint, what parts of that can be painted, and then we can run a competition. And then my thought is to have, instead of having the city build the bike racks like we did, the actual painter part of that project is we can award them $100 or $200, but they have to use that money to paint the actual electrical box as opposed to us doing it. So that was that's my thought process was with Public Works on how to do that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just, we had talked about that, I think, about a year ago, and then some people from the public said, they had been visiting some places, and so anyway. Just wanted
Yes,
to-
and I saw some of those, and Anchorage has a couple that are painted, but they're a different type of electrical box. These are actual meter boxes with visible meters, so we gotta be careful we don't cover the meter so that they can incorporate that into the design. It could be a glass eye for something, but ours are a different design than something else. So what I wanna make sure we do is we don't, and they're old, and we're hanging on by a string, we have one spare. So if we damage either one of those, our spare goes away, and then we have to completely replace that box altogether. So there's some concerns on,
Right.
Greg has some concerns, but we've discussed those, and I think we can alleviate most of those concerns and still do this.
Okay, good, great.
And not cost the city a lot of money
Right,
when it's all said and done, and get the community to participate.
good, thank you.
So moving on to the review, do I have that slide? Yeah, so basically we're on track. Our revenue is slightly under, but we're okay. I think we're gonna pick up in the summer. Our expenditures are on track or below, which we normally are. So we're in good position financially, as Councilmember Best pointed out during mid-year, the 16.7% and the 35%. That's where we've been running since I've been here, between 16 and 17%, between 32 and 35%. So that's not a change to where we've been. So again, we're in good shape financially. Depending on what the council feels come October, we could even take that down a little bit. We took $500,000 last year and put it into capital. If we continued on the track we're going, we could do that again and not feel a lot of pain. I just got to be careful where we put that. So it's a good investment in the city, but those are for discussions again in October. But having said that, this is the time that if you've got ideas that you want us to flush out, get them to me and we'll start researching. For 2019, for planning, operationally, I don't see a lot of changes coming ahead on how we operate. We want to maintain our current service levels. There's some things we know we need to do to become more e-friendly. We're still looking at we're working with Encode, our vendor for our financial systems, on how to do sales tax. It's coming along. There's some other cities that are actually doing some beta testing to see how that, and once that flushes out, we can incorporate into our system. So that's a work in progress. There's always more things we can do to become more e-friendly, and we'll continue to look at those. The other piece is to explore means to provide a higher service level through either modern equipment or doing things differently without increasing overall costs. Payroll and insurance are costs that will continue to go up. Even if we hold steady with our workforce, those costs continue to go up, which eats away at, when we get this big buffer of stuff we're doing, but payroll costs doesn't mean we can increase the services. So I don't want to cut staff in order to meet budget, and I'm not saying we need to do that, but if we keep going at the rate we're going 5 years from now, we're gonna have to make that decision on what services we're gonna cut in order to maintain our staff and continue to do business. So I think there's ways we can provide service. I don't know, so it's more efficiently, but maybe in a different manner, to still provide that same level of service and still get the job done, because there's the front end customer service piece, and then there's a back end of stuff we have to do to keep the city running. So we're continuing to look at that. And then the one piece that we really haven't taken a hard look at is our admin fees, our fee schedule. In my mind, the fees shouldn't be a revenue generation to pay for other services. The fees we charge should be able to pay for the services you're getting. So if you're paying $25 for a business license, that $25 should cover the admin portion of at least administering that license. The time it takes to come to the front counter, the time it takes for that clerk. So if it takes 15 minutes, that's a quarter of an hour. Is that $25 equate to a quarter of an hour's worth of work? And I don't think we're there. I think we're woefully behind on what we're charging for admin services. So that'll be something we look at when we do the fee schedule, to at least bring that up to where it's a pay for service as opposed to a service we're providing, because we can't continue to do business in some of these upfront services. Again, getting back to doing them more efficiently or differently, if we go to e-friendly, there's still a back end. We may have to pay for software, or we may have to pay for somebody to still push a button. So the fees may be able to stay where they are if we can come up with a way to do it, or they may go up because of just the way we do business. But what I don't want to do is use this as a source of revenue to pay for other things. It should pay for what it's doing. Looking at capital, we want to continue to update our current fleet. The police department's in pretty good health. Public Works, as far as the light trucks, we're in pretty good shape. Fire department with light trucks is pretty good shape. When we start looking at our big vehicles, we're starting to show some age. Fire department has a truck that's in 1982. It's still functional, but parts are going to become hard to get in the future. So we can't afford to buy one outright, so we'll pursue grants. Hopefully the state will have some funding available for things like that in the future. Road grader, we've got an old one and a relatively moderately newer one. And the old one is to the point where even rehab may not be worth the cost as opposed to replacing it. So those kind of things are gonna come to the forefront soon. Our garbage truck fleet's in good shape, probably another 3 to 5 years, and that fund will be healthy enough to buy a new garbage truck. So we shouldn't have any problems there. Wastewater treatment plant, with the new facility, we may need to look at adding additional people. But again, that fund, the water sewer fund, is in a position where we can do that without increasing costs any more than we have already. And what we've done on that one in the past is we've done our cost estimates, our cost studies based on a certain amount of operational money. And what we haven't done is put that money into operations. We've continued to operate like we have, and that money that was collected for operations continue to build up in the reserve, which is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But we're to the point now where we may need to have to increase our operational budget, which would look like we're dipping into our reserves, but our fee schedule, our rate schedule for sewer, primarily sewer, accounts for that. We just need to adjust how we budget. So that'll help in that realm. We've budgeted this last year for some lift stations. We'll need to continue to do that. I don't see large costs of wastewater treatment plant other than we're getting farther and further behind just because of the people. And what's going to hurt us even more is a couple of folks retiring next year, so we'll lose a lot of that historical knowledge. The guys that can put Band-Aids on things, and the Band-Aid stays on for 10 years, which, that's worked, but that's not how we should be doing business. We should put a Band-Aid on it until we get it fixed right. But great people there doing great things for good reasons, but we're going to have to look at how we do things differently for long term to make sure our investments stay current. When we also looking for additional means of service levels through newer modern, not saying we need to go out and buy new stuff, but again, we need to start looking ahead. We've got a $12 million facility. In 5 years, I don't want it to be worth $1 million. So we'll need to continue to invest in that, keeping that thing up to date. It's just in the last 3 weeks has been incredible what it's done for the treatment plant out there. It's meeting all the projected levels of ammonia and solids and all those things it's supposed to do in just 3 weeks. So the real test will come December to see how it does in the cold weather. But it does work great now, and I want to make sure we continue to see it works into the future. So looking on the last slide, which are potential areas of investment, I don't have dollar figures for these, except for the pavement repair equipment. We talked about that last year. We contracted a lot of that work out this year. We probably spent close to $20,000 on a contractor doing some of the pavement work that we could have done with that piece of equipment. Long-term, would we get a return on investment in 3 to 5 years? I think we would. Matter of fact, I know we would. But then again, it costs, operationally, it would increase our budget because we'd have to have personnel to run it. So there's a PERS investment that comes with that we'd have to consider if we go full-time. So that one still is on the list as we look at how we maintain our paved roads. A couple of ideas that have been floated. There's no place in Alaska that does glass recycling that we're aware of. There's places we could use glass sand. We could use it in our parks. We could use it in concrete work, and we can use it in the roads. Doesn't do so much for winter work because it doesn't absorb water. So it's not a good abrasive type element to put on the road with our sand. But I think if we start looking with the landfill and with the recycle center, maybe we take the lead on some type of glass recycling machine, crusher, pulverizer is what we're actually looking for. My idea would be that it be housed at the recycle center, and then we have first dibs on the material that comes out, and then they can sell it to whoever else needs it after that. Maybe we provide a grant. But I think the piece of equipment would have to be big enough. It would be a 60 to 100K investment, which is not unsurmountable if we get enough partners to do this. And we get glass throughout the valley, and if folks actually start using the glass sand, I think it would be a good investment for the entire borough. But I think it's going to take somebody to take lead, and my gut tells me it's probably going to have to be us. So that's just something to consider. It will bring our landfill dump tipping fees down because we do take a lot of glass from downtown out to the landfill. And we pay by the pound, but our customers don't. We were going to run a test to see how many pounds that was, but clean glass in a separate dumpster is a bridge too far for a week-long test. So we're backing off on that to see what kind of poundage we might get out of, at least from our city. But Wasilla has just as much, if not more, glass. And then there's, who knows, Anchorage may come out here and dump some of their glass. There's folks looking for a place to dump glass. Yard waste, we did one big collection this year. We're going to do one more this year. We want to do it more often, and I think we probably do just based on the tonnage that we saw from the first time. It might be worth looking at investing in a trailer of some sort to collect yard waste. Our grounds crews, if we staff it to as big as it is this year, we may be able to do that once a week, is what our supervisor is saying right now when she looks at all the things they're doing. If we make this a priority, we might have to cut back on mowing somewhere. But she thinks we could, if we have an additional trailer, we might be able to do yard waste more often. So that's something we can look at. It would have to be a special trailer that's covered so we don't spread glass clippings all over the cities we're driving through or have a collection point. So it would require some funding, but I'm hearing the demand for it. And it would do the city good by not putting it in our garbage trucks because we know it goes there and it goes out the landfill. I'm going to skip winter sidewalk maintenance for just a second because that one's complicated. The last one is economic growth. I put the A word in there, as Councilmember Carrington calls it. I don't know so much that we need to invest in a study that we did years ago, but I think it might be valuable to do some sort of professional marketing that's geared towards future annexation so that the myths of becoming part of the city are dispelled. And really, I don't want to sound callous, but I'm not really concerned as much about bringing in the Springer system as I am Bogart and Palmer-Wasilla Highway and stretches of the Glen Highway that have enormous commercial potential. Because that's really what we need. That's really what we need because folks are already moving out here. They're moving to the Springer system because Palmer's here, not necessarily because they're in the city limits. They can still enjoy the fruits of the city. But I think we could potentially have more commercial out here if we can provide police services because folks won't invest without police service. People will buy a house without police protection, but not a lot of businesses will buy into property without police services. So that would be my recommendation on economic growth. She's not here anymore, but maybe we can hire Christy to be executive director, producer, and create a short video, not more than a minute and a half, that we can send out to different folks or when folks come in So that would be that piece for economic growth, not a study to see if we need to annex or not. And then finally, back to winter sidewalk maintenance. I really would like to clear every sidewalk in the city, but economically, I don't know that we could afford it. We could enforce our current code more stringently, and we probably need to do that in the next year or so. And if we do it cold turkey this year and start handing out citations for folks that don't clean their sidewalks, that might be a little disruptive. I think what we should do is an information campaign early on, remind people that you're responsible for clearing your sidewalks. We have to clean our city-owned sidewalks better than we have. I would say that we did it pretty good, better this year than we have in the past. The city sidewalks are like around the library, in front of across the street on Colony, that's ours. Across the street on Alaska, in front of the depot, that's ours. In front of City Hall, the fire station. But then you have the other areas that are city right away, but it's still the property owner's responsibility, and that's include downtown and the residential areas. If we do want to go forward and clean all the sidewalks, even if we encourage folks to clean their own, it's going to change the nature of how we plow. Because right now we plow everything up to the sidewalk. So if folks do their sidewalks afterwards, we've already cleaned it. So we would have to potentially delay how we pick up snow, or we just plow the middle of the roads and wait 48 hours and then plow next to the curb, which causes some issues downtown with folks trying to get over berms. So I think we want to do better, but I think the first piece, we just take it in chunks. We notify everyone, and we staff our winter crew with the equipment to do city-owned sidewalks next year, which will be an investment, and then we can look at how we do the rest of the city next year. If the residents do clean their sidewalks, like we'd like them to, then maybe we don't need to do anything else. If it's not getting done to the standard that we would think is appropriate, then we can look at either enforcement through letters and citations, or we bite the bullet and buy some more equipment and do the whole city. The Public Works estimates we have 100,000 yards of sidewalk that need to be cleared, and there's no one piece of equipment we could buy. I know Anchorage has the tracks that wouldn't work downtown for us because our sidewalks are too narrow, and they have the street poles and street lights in our sidewalks, which are different from Anchorage. Walk behind snow blowers are good for certain sections, but if we were going to have somebody walk behind snow blower, it'd take them a week to get all the sidewalks cleared. So again, when we get time for budget, it's something to consider, doing it in steps. Equipment wise, if we went whole hog, I think we're looking about 150,000 in the appropriate equipment. If we do just city stuff, I think we can do it for less than 20. So those are some benchmarks. And then other than that, I don't have any new projects, although there are several I've heard of from council members and from the public that we just haven't flushed out. So at this point, I'm done, I guess. Listen to your comments.
Okay, comments or questions, suggestions from city council members?
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Best.
Thank you. I know last year, towards the end of the season, it is when George McCollum usually comes in and gives us his report. And if memory serves me right, he had talked about that the golf carts were really getting to a state of some issue. And I don't know if we gotten to the point where they're just barely making it around the course or how they are this year right now. I have heard from a few folks that have had a little concern, folks that go out there quite often. But I know that we had looked at potentially some of those single-person units. If we could kind of work that into the budget, what is kind of like a 5-year plan? If this is something we can kind of pick up 5, 10, something like that each year, just kind of the plan for it. So I'd like to see that come forward. Also, with the new park that we were able to go and see, and driving that road often, with Felton, for those of you that not familiar with it, we've got 2 bicycle lanes on either side of the road, and about 100 yards past intersection of Hidden Ranch Loop, the south side, the bicycle lanes just neck right back into the road and they go away. And so they're about 300 yards short of Helen, which would put us right at the entrance of that new park. So I'd like to see that possibly be in the plan. I don't know if we have the right of way, but to have those numbers back for us for purchasing of the right of way if we need to get any additional, and also then the installation of the bike lane itself. And then I'd like to ask, I might actually hold this, I'll at least state the intent and then maybe later on. We've talked about over the years about potentially adding a park, and it was stated earlier that we have a lot of build up going off in the Hidden Ranch subdivision. There is a piece of property that abuts the Crevice Marine Trail system right there, and it would be a continuation of kind of the bicycle paths and pedestrian paths that we have and have had routed in the years past. I think our window of opportunity to acquire a piece of property back there is growing very, very small. And I'd like to ask for council support to encourage the city manager to engage with the developer, find out if the property is available, what it might cost us, and bring that to us for potentially some action that might happen this year if it's necessary to grab a hold of it right now, if not add it to the budget for next year.
Okay, so,
I will support that.
okay, thank you.
And I would add that a thorough peruse, to peruse the ordinances we have for parks, and make sure that that all fits together. And it certainly is time to do that.
Okay.
And if I may, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
I think right now the biggest concern would be to acquire the property, and then certainly the following year, we could, this next year, add it to the budget to clear budget, a plan, and then put it through the Parks and Rec of how to develop that. But I think at least right now, it's to acquire the property.
Okay. Any further suggestions to the city manager? Dave, you doing okay out there?
I'm good to go. If I could put some input in.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to see, on note of the annexation, with that new area going in, I think it's a senior campus off of Irwin Loop. We talked about it a couple meetings back about hooking up utilities. Am I ringing any bells? I'd like to see if we could look at, if we're going to look at some kind of annexation, possibly solicit them to come in, and in addition to that, bring in everything up to Hammer and extend it, all the way over to Bogard, and just kind of close that patchwork in. It's just a start. I mean, you're going to look at a lot more traffic going through on, I believe that's Felton, when they put the extension in. And that huge commercial area out there, I think it's something to look at.
Alrighty, thank you. Any other council comments, support, or ideas regarding?
Madam Mayor, I'd support Councilman Fuller about understanding more of the annexation opportunities, and we want to make sure that we proceed with this in a thoughtful manner, that there's many concerns that many of the citizens had the last time that we've broached the subject of annexation, and it's a new environment that's out there too. We have many of the stuff that we've been discussing at the BED level, short-term rentals and all this kind of stuff. Those things are going to have impact in that future annexation. During the break, Chairwoman Silva was talking about situations like that is something that, if there is an annexation, that's going to become a very big impact. So I appreciate her comments. Also, I would ask for council support to encourage the manager to go forward with the discussion of the glass recycling opportunity. That I think it is something that the city of Palmer might need to take a lead on, and we might be the right size of a community to be able to be the kind of the forefront of that.
thank you. And Councilwoman Sabrina Combs?
Yes, that was just gonna be my comment. The glass recycling is something I get a lot of comments about, as well as the brush cleanup, the yard waste comments. So, it was extremely helpful in spring cleanup, and we can look at having it more often. And I also support the annexation conversation. Thanks.
Okay. Any further?
I would
Yeah,
say that
Councilman Kennedy. Oh, I'm sorry,
the
go
brush
ahead.
chipper that the council approved last year has proved to be very useful. It was a wise investment.
Councilman Carrington?
I was just going to say about the A word, the annexation idea of, I think part of what the manager might be alluding to is this, the fastest annexation you can do is when someone is right next to you and wants to come in.
Right.
And using that almost as a marketing idea of, gee, you could get police protection if you came into the city or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I think our approach is showing why you want to be in the city, not us telling you you're going to be in the city. The marketing approach is, here's what you can do. And I think we alluded to the senior center that's going in, the assisted living. We haven't had direct talks, but indications are that they are favorable to coming in, and which leads to the other properties surrounding it. So using that, and while we're at it, who else wants to join in? And it's a rapidly moving ship, and people want part of it. That's an easier way to do it than is you're going to be part of the city. So that's how I would approach it.
Right, yeah. Okay, further questions or comments, suggestions to the city manager? Okay, well, thank you, sir. Good report and
I
some
would say if
thoughtful
there's
things.
any ideas between now and about the end of August, just shoot me an email or get them to the mayor or the clerk, and we could add them on if you think of stuff between now and then. After August, then it's kind of on the fly because we already put the book together. But that's kind of the cutoff for good ideas.
Okay, all righty. Okay, thank you, sir. All righty, can I have a motion to come out of the committee on the whole?
So moved.
Second. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you take the roll on the motion to come out of the committee on the whole?
Councilmember David Fuller. Combs.
Yes.
Councilmember Linda Combs.
Yes.
Councilmember Steve Carrington.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Richard Best. Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we are now out of the committee on the whole. The record of items placed on the table.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have the communication from AML regarding ballot measure 1.
Okay. We now have another section open for audience participation. Anyone in the audience that would like to come forth and address the council, 3 minutes if you're representing yourself, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Okay, seeing no one come forth, audience participation is now closed. And council member comments, Councilwoman Sabrina, we'll start with you, please.
I just want to start by thanking the Board of Economic Development. Thank you, Dusty, for your work. I know the depot conversation is always a heated argument in the city, so we appreciate it. Christy's not here, but she has often been one of my role models in Palmer, so I'm just really happy about the proclamation, so thank you for doing that.
Councilwoman Linda Combs.
Well, obviously, I need to mention Friday, and the picnic, and super hoping that you'll all be there, so that we can celebrate our 29th year of having a community picnic, showing how proud we are of our community and the people who make such things possible, and is one of the best reasons for living here. So, and I'm sure I could think of other events. I've gone to a few since our last meeting, but I wanted to just spend a few minutes saying that, unfortunately, once again, I had a need to call on our public safety folks. And there is nothing more reassuring than to know that we live in a community where public safety comes first, where our patrolmen give medical assist, and our fire and rescue people all are obviously highly trained and highly professional. And I want to personally thank the fire chief for his efforts. at my home 2 weeks ago, and his just genuine kindness. And the dispatch person, whose name I did not get at the time, certainly has a great voice on the telephone. It automatically calms you. I'm not sure how they teach that part, but it's okay. It automatically calms you. So thank you so much to the city of Palmer for, well, being there when they're needed.
Deputy Mayor Best, comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last city council meeting that we had, and there was an article that came out in the Frontiersman the next day, and I'd like to state that I believe they mischaracterized a comment that I had made, and I would like to read what was printed. Just it was in the article. It was talking about the last meeting. It said Deputy Mayor Richard Best suggested in jest to Councilwoman Sabrina Combs that MEA may be able to assist with the process as Combs works for MEA. I'd like to state that I did not direct my comment to Councilwoman Combs. That was to Miss Julie Esty, which was the Director of External Affairs for MEA, who was in the audience, who had addressed us earlier that evening, that I would never ask Councilwoman Combs to compromise herself and put herself in a conflict of interest situation. That was not my intent, and so I'd like to apologize to Councilwoman Combs if it was also taken in that respect. But that, for the record, I did not direct that comment to Councilwoman Combs.
Okay. Councilman Carrington?
I also want to echo the thanking Dusty for coming and presenting and giving us a good comprehensive coverage of what they've been doing and planning to do. And I'm also intrigued with the glass recycling, although from a vote earlier in the summer, I might not be considered a recycling kind of person, but I like the sounds of this project, and I think it's a good comprehensive project that could do good.
Councilman Fuller?
Again, would like to thank Dusty for coming out and keep working on what you guys are doing. I'd really like to see us commodify a lot of these public spaces that we're kind of giving away, I feel, for free, that we need to support and somehow. And I am, too, again, intrigued with the glass, and I hope that takes off. I think that could really do a paradigm shift here in the Valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing, and that was that since our last meeting, the Midsummer Art and Garden Fair happened in Palmer, and I've never seen as many people attend as they did this year. It was amazing, and so I just want to say thank you to all of the volunteers who put that together. The weather was supposed to be rainy, and it was beautiful, and so it was a great day for our city. And also to Councilman Best, I don't have that type of power at MEA, so you're fine. Thank you.
Being further no further business, the city council meeting is adjourned.
Good night, all.